Now that we have Blender installed, we need to do a few things to set it up for our low poly purposes. First, we need to disable something called mip maps. This is simply because of how Blender shows textures with a filter. You may have seen in some older games the option to choose to have point filtering or bilinear texture filtering. This is much the same. Nothing wrong with having blurry textures. Many have a fondness for games like Half-Life or Quake 2, but in this project we will go with crispy pixels. Don't worry about the unwrapping, the way textures is displayed on the model, because that is going to be covered in 0.2.4 of this series. Now that is disabled, we're almost ready to go. To see our textures on models in an easy and intuitive fashion, we need to go to Shading and click Textured Solid. This makes it so that you see the texture onto the model inside the viewport without having to set up materials. This feature is something I really want in 2.8 and is mainly the reason why I don't use 2.8, and I hope this gets implemented as you are forced to set up materials in that, something that isn't really useful to game developers that set up all their materials inside the game engine. Before you start your model, you should consider the style you are seeking to achieve with your low poly, as you are setting self-imposed limitations of texture resolutions and poly counts. You're probably not going to be restricted by any current device, mobile or otherwise, but rather try for a specific low poly aesthetic. As with anything, it's good to have reference. My advice is that in addition to having reference images of the subject, like say an animal or character or vehicle, you can also have reference of the specific low poly style you're trying to resemble, especially when you're starting out and developing your own style. I've used a lot of reference images, of course, from classic PS1 games, but there are also many great artists on places like Twitter and Polycount. I might even link some of those down below. Feel free to link your inspirations.